When I was 15, I had a child, but right after giving birth, my mother tricked me into signing adoption papers without my knowledge. My baby was taken from my arms and I never saw him again. 20 years passed, and I thought I had left the past behind, but one day my son showed up at our doorstep, and my world turned upside down. Now, a painful question lingers in my mind. Should I give my parents a chance to make amends before it's too late? When I was just 15, my life took an entirely different turn. I found out I was pregnant, and although I was too young to fully understand what lay ahead, I decided to keep the baby. At that time, my boyfriend and I were still in a relationship, and although our families were both very young and unprepared, we were both determined to take responsibility. My boyfriend and his family were always supportive. They helped me get a job at his uncle's restaurant, where I worked as a waitress on evenings and weekends, earning whatever I could to provide for the baby. He worked at his dad's auto parts store. Although we didn't make much, we were committed, saving every dollar for our child's future. However, my family was completely different. The moment I told them I was pregnant, my parents relentlessly pressured me. They didn't just urge me to have an abortion, they demanded that I put the baby up for adoption, threatening they would never accept the child. The tension between us grew stronger. My mother would constantly berate me, accusing me of ruining my life. My father, on several occasions, went to my boyfriend's house and yelled at him, blaming him for getting me pregnant at such a young age. One day, my father went to my boyfriend's workplace and physically attacked him right on the street. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My father had beaten my boyfriend, and it left me feeling confused and unsure of what to do. My mother wasn't any better. She went to the mall and confronted my boyfriend's mother, shouting at her in front of everyone. This only created more hostility between the two families. Exhausted and emotionally drained, I stopped talking to my parents for months. I felt betrayed and couldn't continue living under the pressure they were putting on me. However, one day, my mother called me and said they had changed their minds. They didn't want to lose me or the baby and were ready to accept everything in order to heal our relationship. Although I was deeply hurt and suspicious, I decided to give them a chance. My boyfriend and his family encouraged me to try, hoping that things would improve. We all hoped for better days. What happened next, however, only deepened my pain. When I went into labor, I was at my parents' house. They took me to the hospital and repeatedly told me they couldn't get a hold of my boyfriend or his family. They promised me they would keep trying, but what I didn't know was that they were lying. My baby was born, and my boyfriend's family wasn't there. I couldn't understand why they had abandoned me at such a crucial moment. When I left the hospital, my heart was broken and filled with betrayal. I went straight to my boyfriend and his family, where we all mourned the loss of my baby together. Once again, I was forced into an impossible situation, as my parents pressured me to return to their home. But I couldn't. I couldn't accept the lies and cruelty they had shown me and my baby. Those months were filled with pain, and from that moment on, I never wanted to see them again. After leaving the hospital, I turned to my boyfriend and his family. They were the only ones left who cared for me, the ones who gave me love and comfort during that time. Together we grieved, wept for the child we had lost, but the pain of my family's betrayal still lingered. I couldn't understand why they would act like that, why they would abandon me when I needed them the most. Months passed, and I found myself caught in a painful cycle of decisions and choices I never thought I'd have to make. Even though my boyfriend and his family were by my side, I still felt isolated within my own family. They still didn't understand me, didn't show any compassion for the pain I was enduring. My mother's calls kept coming, and even though I didn't answer, she persisted. One day, she showed up at my boyfriend's house, standing at the door with no sign of wanting to compromise. She told me they had changed their minds and wanted to meet with me, but I knew deep down this was just another trap. I couldn't trust them anymore. Despite feeling conflicted and heartbroken, I decided to give them one last chance, a final attempt to see if they genuinely wanted to make amends for the mistakes they had made. I allowed them an opportunity to show that they truly cared and wanted to fix things. However, just days later, I realized everything was a lie. They hadn't really changed. It was just a late regret realizing what they had done. My mother came to see me, trying to convince me that I wouldn't be happy without them in my life, but I knew I could never go back to them. At this point, I began to feel exhausted with trying to salvage our relationship. After everything they had done, could I ever forgive them? I asked myself that question every day. My parents were the ones who had deceived me, taken my baby from me without regard for my feelings. Even if they regretted it now, the wounds they caused ran too deep to heal. I couldn't keep living in their lies and torment anymore. They had abandoned me when I needed them most, and now I didn't know if I could trust them again. Even though the pain was still there, I realized I couldn't keep living in the past. In the end, I decided to cut ties with them completely, refusing to let their late regrets ruin the life my boyfriend and I had built. We had found a new family in the love and care from his family. I didn't need the people who had hurt me anymore. When my husband and I began building our life together, I thought I had left all the painful past behind. The birth of our second child was approaching, and although I wanted a completely different experience this time, the wounds from my first birth were still fresh. The feelings of fear, confusion, and anxiety never fully left me, and I couldn't escape those emotions. As the due date approached, my husband became increasingly anxious. He couldn't bear the thought of me giving birth alone like the first time. He said he couldn't let something like that happen again. While I knew he just wanted to protect me, this only added to my stress. I didn't want the people around me to worry too much or pressure me. I just wanted everything to go peacefully without any shocks or uncertainties. I decided that this time I wanted my mother-in-law to be there. She had always been loving and supportive, and I felt she was the only one I could truly share my worries with. My husband and I agreed that she would be in the delivery room so I could feel more at ease. He remained adamant that he would be with me throughout the process, but I knew he was also afraid, just like me. The day of the birth arrived, and everything went smoothly, but there was still a tense atmosphere in the delivery room. My husband couldn't take his eyes off me. His eyes were filled with worry. My mother-in-law was right there by my side, comforting me, encouraging me, and helping me stay calm. When our second child was born, I felt like I had climbed a huge mountain. Finally, I had given birth safely, and I felt like I had overcome the fear that had haunted me all this time. Although everything was fine, the pain from my firstborn still hadn't faded. My husband was still haunted by what had happened in the past. He never wanted to miss a single moment, never wanted to leave me to suffer alone again. Sometimes he would tell me that he feared I would go through that pain again. I understood him, but I also wanted him to understand that I had done everything I could to move on from the past. But no matter what, we had gotten through this challenge together, and that was what mattered most. The birth of our second child gave us more confidence in our ability to be parents. While the shadows of the past still lingered in my mind, we understood that life had to go on, and we had to be strong to protect our new family. We continued to live, love each other, and raise our children, but the pain from our firstborn remained in my heart, reminding me of a difficult time I would never forget. 4 years after we had our second child, our life had started to settle down. Although the pain from the past hadn't fully healed, I had learned to live with it and build a happy family with my husband and children. But then, an unexpected event changed everything. One day, while I was at a softball camp with my eldest daughter out of town, my phone suddenly rang. It was my husband, and I could hear the worry in his voice. He didn't give me specific details, but he insisted I come home immediately. Feeling uneasy, I quickly pulled my daughter out of camp and drove home with a heavy heart. I had no idea what had happened, but I could sense something big was about to unfold. When I arrived home, my husband was standing at the door, his face betraying the emotion he was feeling. I looked around, and the first thing I noticed was a stranger standing in the living room. He was a tall, young man trying to keep his composure, but I could see the anxiety in his eyes. My husband looked at me, then at the stranger, and said, "This is our son." At that moment, I was frozen. Our firstborn, The child I had lost so many years ago. The one I had no idea how he had grown was standing right in front of me. A flood of emotions overwhelmed me: shock, joy, and deep sadness for all the years we had lost. I couldn't believe what was happening, and I just stood there, speechless. My husband explained that this young man was our son, who had been adopted by another family after being taken away from us at birth. He had found us after one of his adoptive parents had discovered our story. He wanted to meet us and learn about his past. And now, here we were, face to face. We sat down and started talking. He shared his life over the past 20 years, describing the loving adoptive family that had raised him. He told us that growing up, he always felt like something was missing, and when the opportunity arose, he decided to search for us. His story filled me with both joy and pain. He didn't blame us for what had happened, and the understanding in his eyes made me feel a sense of relief. Our entire family spent the day sharing stories, laughing, and crying together. All those years, we had no idea how our son had been, whether he was healthy or happy, but now he was standing in front of us. That's all I needed. Despite the wounds still fresh, I knew life had given me a precious chance to mend the mistakes of the past, and although time had taken so much from us, I felt fortunate that we could begin anew from this point. When our firstborn returned to our lives, I didn't know how to feel. After all the lost years, his return brought not only joy, but also an indescribable feeling in my heart. Still, I couldn't help but think about what my parents had done, the people who deceived me and took my child away. Every year, my husband and I would remember our son on special occasions, especially on his birthday. Even though we didn't know if he liked the gifts we bought, my husband would still buy him a Matchbox car, and I would bake a rhubarb sponge pudding. It may have seemed silly, but it was how we felt connected to our son, even though we didn't know if he knew or liked those things. Then one year, when we flew to visit him during his birthday, I began to feel that we had truly found a piece of the family we had lost. This closeness was not just a reunion, but the integration of the missing pieces from our lives over the past 2 decades. Our son was thrilled to see us again, and he happily embraced his younger siblings. Our entire family enjoyed our time together, sharing memories and creating new moments. Still, a deep sadness lingered within me. After all the suffering and loss, I couldn't forget what my parents had done. I had never forgiven them for taking my son, and the anger still simmered inside me. Yet, when I thought about our son and the good life he had, I couldn't help but feel conflicted in my heart. My husband always encouraged me to focus on the positives. He said we had built a wonderful family and a fulfilling life, and that my parents didn't deserve to witness that. He wanted them to see the child they had taken from me, to realize all they had lost. However, in my heart, I felt they didn't deserve the chance to meet our children. Part of me wanted to show them the truth, to let them see that we had overcome everything and built a happy life without them. But another part of me couldn't bear the thought of them continuing to exist in our lives. After everything they had done, did they truly deserve to see our children? The children they had tried to tear apart from us? This internal conflict was unsettling, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to give them a chance to approach us, yet I couldn't entirely forget the hope we once had for a complete family. The guilt and anger kept rising within me, and I couldn't decide whether I should allow them the opportunity to meet our children or not.